when I talk to people about who the most important person is in your out-of-state investing team, I always say the most important person is the other investors you're friends with. Because when you have a question about who to use, you don't have to go to Google.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back everyone to another show of the Gentle Art of Crushing It. My name is Nathan. I am your Monday host, and today I'm super excited to be with Mike Newton, also known as Millennial Mike. I'm super excited for this conversation in particular because Mike and I share the same passion around remote real estate investing, and hopefully that's what we're going to be hearing all about today. Mike, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Happy to talk about investing in the treacherous and scary Northwest Indiana.
We're going to have to talk about that one because Gary does not have a great reputation as far as I can tell.
Nope. One quick Google search and you're going to feel like you need to wipe your computer's hard drive. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, I went down that rabbit hole once because somebody was telling me about it because we have rental properties. We were talking about this before we hit record, but close to Gary, not quite in Gary. And a friend of mine sent me this video on YouTube about Gary, Indiana, and how it's basically a horrible place to be and live and invest and all of that. And then I had the YouTube algorithm just kind of keep popping those up, as recommendations. It's like, interesting. So, well, let's, before we jump into Gary and talk about the wonderful city that Gary is, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into real estate, where you're at with real estate and success in general?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm actually a police officer full-time still. I'm a SWAT officer, and I've been doing that for 8 years. Prior to that, I was in construction. When I turned 18 to 25, I was in construction. And when I was in construction, I used to sit in the shop with power tools on all the time. And I would listen to music. I'd have headphones on because, the saws are blaring loud. You can't hear anything. And I'd listen to music. And then they asked me, hey, man, we're thinking about having you be a sales guy, to be a salesperson, because every time you go out and do an installation in someone's house, you do a remodel in their kitchen, you come back with a sale for their bathroom. They liked that. And they were like, ooh, there's opportunity there. Let's make some money off this kid. And so I started Googling because I didn't know how to be a salesperson. I started Googling, how do you learn to sell? And I was on YouTube all the time. This is back in 2010. YouTube's still pretty new. And I was on YouTube just typing in how to sell or how to be a salesperson. And that's where I first learned of like Brian Tracy and some of these other old school sales guys like Zig Ziglar. And I came across somebody that people might have heard of. His name's Grant Cardone. Now, back in the day, a long time ago, before Grant Cardone ever talked about real estate, he was a sales instructor and specifically like a car sales guy.
Cars, yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of listened to some of his seminars. I read a couple of his books. And I was like, okay, well, I understand a little bit more about handling objections and whatever. And then, as time went on, he started to morph into the Grant Cardone we know now. He started talking about real estate and commercial real estate and explaining using debt and leverage to buy assets. And I had always known, because I grew up extremely poor, about as poor as you can. Section 8 housing, 6 kids from 3 different dads, no father in the picture. My mom had a job that I probably can't say on your podcast or it might get like shadow banned, but it was an illegal job. I always wanted to be financially well off because I grew up so poor. And I listened to Grant talk about real estate. And whatever your opinion of him now is, back then he was a little bit more conservative maybe in his showboating. And he got me interested in real estate, so I started learning about it. And that was sort of what started my journey of knowing I was going to invest in real estate one day. Unfortunately for me, YouTube didn't exist in the degree it does now. Your podcast wasn't there. My channel wasn't there. A lot of these bigger pockets had just started out. It was like a blog at the time. It wasn't like a YouTube channel. And so it took a few years before a lot of the information that everybody knows about now, like house hacking, kind of made its way onto the platform so I could learn about it and then buy my first house hack. That's a little bit about me. I started very poor in construction, became a cop, am a SWAT officer still to this day. I buy real estate in Indiana. I started with a house hack here in Seattle, but I started investing at a distance when I realized that it wasn't going to work for me here.
And would you say you got into real estate just because of your listening to Grant Cardone? Because I mean, people can get wealthy in many different ways,
Right.
right? And using many different vehicles to do that. So I'm just curious, why real estate? Was it just happenstance because it was Grant Cardone, or was there something else in the family or some other people that you heard of? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So when I was 18 years old, I started listening to Dave Ramsey. Before I even ever invested started working in construction, I was listening to Dave Ramsey when I was just an 18-year-old kid. And to his credit, because of his advice, I never took out bad debt like a lot of my friends did. But I was on the Dave Ramsey path to success. I had talked to one of his endorsed local providers, one of his smart investor guys who will get you invested in a Roth IRA and will get you invested in mutual funds. And I thought that was the path to success. I thought I was already taken care of. Look, I'm contributing to a Roth IRA. I got nothing else to worry about. But I couldn't help but feel the frustration because when I met with the guy, he was like, hey, you're not going to be able to retire till you're 65. You got to save all this money, based on the projections of your income and even some raises, your retirement's really not going to look that great. And I was like, well, at least I'm starting early, but it is kind of sad that retirement's going to suck. But I thought that was the path to success because that's kind of what gets pushed on you from the time you're a kid. Go to high school, go to college, get a good job. Pensions are gone, and match your company 401k and invest in a Roth IRA, and you'll be all right when you retire. I didn't know there was other opportunities. So yeah, what really got me interested in real estate was listening to Grant Cardone. That's what shifted my mindset. I knew that the whole stock IRA 401k path, that was like my placeholder. I didn't really know what to do other than that, and it wasn't until I found Grant. I thought that the trick might have been just increasing my regular disposable income, and that's why I was leaning in towards sales. I was like, hey, I can make more money in disposable income, but I didn't know where to put it after that.
Yeah. And would you say your motivation was the fuel for you wanting to change your future, I guess, and how much money you made and your income and your retirement and all of that? Was that fuel kind of your upbringing and your family situation, or did you have something different, just saying I want better in general? I'm curious if you had something that fueled that motivation.
Yeah, and I don't know your background a ton, Nathan, but I'm sure there's people who listen to your podcast and listen to your show who grew up very poor like me, people who know what it's like to run out of your food stamps money with a week left in the month, right? You got 3 weeks of the month have gone by. You're done with food stamps. You're done with EBT. You got a week with nothing, and you got to make it to the first of next month. People like me who grew up on Section 8 housing, you had to move all the time. You get evicted all the time, and the heat gets shut off in the wintertime. People who have a similar backstory to me of knowing that the power company in North Dakota, because it's so bitter cold and negative 40, even when you don't pay your bill, they can't shut the heat off for more than 50% of the day because you could quite literally freeze to death. When you grow up in an environment where you're so poor and you see your friends go to camps and you see soccer camps and sports camps and you can never do anything, you can never afford anything, you have hand-me-down garbage clothing, you don't have video games like your buddies, it just gets this is as poor as you can be in America. It's nothing compared to a lot of folks across the rest of the world. But when you live that as your childhood, you learn to hate being poor. At least I did. And so I knew I had to figure out a way to not continue that cycle of poverty. And so I didn't. I have worked 3 jobs or the equivalent of 3 jobs in hours worked for most of my adult life now.
Yeah. What about your siblings? They think the same, do the same? They operate the same way, or are they different?
Well, I'm the oldest of 6.
Listen to this because you might not have good things to say about them. I don't know. We'll see.
I love all of my siblings. I'm the oldest of 6. There's 5 of us that are boys. And I've got just a whole host of different personalities. I have a couple of them that are a little bit more industrious like me, a little bit more of the want to save and invest like me. And then I got a couple of them who, if you give them $10,000, it's gone tomorrow on some stupid purchase. It just is what it is.
What do you think it takes, though? Because that's why I was asking, right, to get to that point. Because you obviously had, I imagine, probably had a similar, if not the exact same, social, context, environment, and family upbringing, right? But why did you go the direction you're going down now versus the other 5?
It's an interesting thing because I've wondered, are some people just literally built different? Are you born with it? Is it something that can be trained? Is it something that can be taught? Or do you just have to be born in a certain way? Look at personality types. You got extroverts and introverts. Was it something that happened to them, or were they just born extroverted? And it's a good question. I think that none of my family members, I would say, are bad with money. Even the ones who, if you gave them $10,000, they'd spend it. They won't go into debt. They won't go into copious amounts of debt or anything stupid like that. But there's just varying different degrees of who wants to save and invest versus who just wants to live paycheck to paycheck. But all of us are very debt averse. And the story that I always remember as a kid, going with my mom to the grocery store or wherever we were going, and she would write a check and she would have to ask, are you going to cash this today, or can you cash this on Monday because the money will be in there over the weekend? And I just remember hating those conversations, hating being poor. And I know that they all have similar stories to that of not having things. And again, I would say nobody's really bad with money, but none of them have really, a couple of them have not really tried to learn as much about money. But some of that might even just be the difference in, I'm the oldest of six, and then there's the baby of the family who's a little bit more used to being taken care of. And so there's a lot of interesting studies on where you're born in your family, a middle child, oldest child, youngest child, and how that relates to your outlook on life too. So I couldn't tell you 100%.
No, I was just curious because, again, it's that same, I was wondering if all of you had that same fire. And I mean, I'm, one of four. And as far as I know in our family, I'm the only one kind of doing what we're doing now. So I just find it interesting. It's very different. So obviously that's a bunch of fuel for your fire to get a better future, right? What did it take for you to get into real estate? So you said house hack. Was that your first kind of foray into real estate? Was the house hack? Because I'm curious to hear about how you started around that, if that was your first deal, but then how that led you to investing thousands of miles away. Because didn't you hear you have to be next to the rental properties that you own because you can't invest that far away?
Yeah. You should never invest more than 30 minutes away from where you live. Whatever brainiac said that back in the day. Well, you know what? In their defense, back when there wasn't cell phones and there wasn't the internet and there wasn't Zoom and things like that, I can understand maybe why that made sense in the 70s. Today, ridiculous. Was my house hacked first thing I did? Yeah, it was. I was watching a lot of videos about real estate investing and made the decision that, hey, house hacking is the best way to start. Everybody has to live somewhere. Everyone has their biggest expense is their rent, unless you're still living with mom and dad, which if you are, I'm jealous. But most people's biggest expense is their rent. I was paying almost $2,000 a month in Seattle at the time. And I was able to find a duplex. I had to go 45 minutes outside of the city. I had to make sacrifices. Couldn't just buy something that would have made an easy commute. So you might have to make a sacrifice. But 45 minutes outside of the city, I was able to find a duplex that was going to give me a $2,700 a month mortgage payment. And then it already had a tenant on one side paying $1,600 a month, which means that I only had an $1,100 responsibility left on that mortgage payment. But I got a roommate, my best friend, moved in with me. So he paid me $600 a month. So after all was said and done, I was able to take a nearly $2,000 a month in rent cost that I was spending each month and turn that into a $500 mortgage payment. Well, saving $1,500 a month that I would have spent in rent that I now get to keep in my pocket and instead save that quicker to buy the next rental. That's why I think house hacking is so powerful. It just drops your lowest expense. And that's, for most people, rent, brings that close to zero or all the way to zero. And at this point now, one side of the duplex covers the entire mortgage because I've refinanced and got a cheaper payment, and rents have gone up over the last 5 years.
And then, so how'd you go from that to remote real estate investing? Because I think that's where for a lot of the audience and a lot of people that I interact with, that's where, the show stops, right? Is I live in a high cost of living area, or I can't find anything around here. So I'm done, right? I can't invest in real estate. So how do you go from house hacking to now investing thousands of miles away?
So I understand your caution. I understand this sentiment of, I don't want to go somewhere I don't know in a place that I've never been or maybe only been once. I don't want to invest my money. I can't go see the house. What if the tenants are doing things that I don't like? Dude, I completely understand it. If you didn't have that initial response, if your initial reaction wasn't, heck no, that's not for me, there's probably something wrong with you. You're probably a little too risky. What got me interested? Well, a Couple of things. Number one, I bought my first house hack. I was able to get in with 5% down. It was a $450,000 duplex. Stuff's expensive out here. Yeah. Over the next year or so, as I'm saving up money again, prices are skyrocketing. It's now 2019, 2020, 2021. And I'm looking around saying to myself, I got to save 20% for a 600,000, 20% at least, plus closing costs for a $600,000 duplex. That's like $120,000 to $150,000. That's a lot of money to save up. It's going to take me years, and then as time goes on, the price just keeps going up. So I'm chasing this number I'll never catch. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'll invest somewhere else in the state of Washington instead of Seattle. I'll find a cheaper area. So I start looking 3 hours away from where I'm at, middle of the state, central Washington, Tri-Cities area. Prices are a little bit better, but they're still kind of pricey. And then I say to myself, well, if I'm willing to invest 3 hours away, well, what's the difference between 3 hours and 10 hours or 20 hours, or a few states away? And so I had a friend who was investing in Indiana, and he had watched me be interviewed on a YouTube channel similar to yours, Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time. I was his second ever interview. He had interviewed me, and this guy watched my interview. He just reached out to me and said, hey, I'm interested in chatting with you because you're a cop, I'm a retired cop, we're both investors, let's talk sometime. And I said, sure, why not? And then he started telling me about how he was investing in Indiana from the East Coast. And he told me, hey man, you should give it a shot, you should try it. And so he was like, I'm investing in Gary. So then I Googled Gary, and as I mentioned earlier, the first thing that as soon as I Googled it, I was like, absolutely not. Dude, are you crazy? Are you insane? Who would ever invest here? 3 times the national poverty rate, 3 times the national crime rate, murder capital of the country in 1993, 13,000 abandoned buildings in the city, worst public schools in the state. I mean, like, every horrible metric that you get, it's a depopulating city. Every horrible metric that you get told to run away from is going on in this city. Absolutely not. I'm not doing it. No way. Well, my buddy Mark is a little socially awkward, and he doesn't know how to take no for an answer. So he just kept pestering me and just give it a shot. Look it up. Look into it. I know what Google says. And I watched him buy his first rental because he was investing, but he was investing in like Alabama and in Virginia. So I met him before he bought his first rental. He bought his first one, and then his second, and then his fifth, then his 10th, then his 15th. And it got to the point over the next year where I couldn't just keep saying, Mark, you're dumb. This is a bad place to invest. I'm not going to do it. Because he was having all of this success. And I asked him, well, aren't you having tons of evictions? Aren't your tenants just shooting up the place? Isn't, like every horrible thing you can think of. I mean, aren't the buildings just falling apart? Nobody's paying their rent. And he was like, no, I'm not having any of those problems. This property manager does a good job. I'm buying these properties turnkey remodeled, so they're nice properties. They're not slum properties. He's like, just call and talk to the people. So eventually, after being bullied by Mark into calling and talking to these people, I let a 50-year-old man boss me around. Anyways, after getting bullied by my mentor, Mark, I started calling and talking to the turnkey provider, and I called and spoke to the property managers, and I decided, all right, I'll try. I'll buy one property, a $60,000 turnkey rental, which, if 20% down, 20% of 60,000 is $12,000. All right, if I make a mistake, it's a $12,000 mistake. That's better than a $120,000 mistake. I'll just try it. So I closed on the property, already had tenants in it, closed on the property, and I sat there and gritted my teeth and just waited for the phone call. I know it's coming. They're going to rip me off. They're going to burn it down. They're not going to pay rent. There's going to be a felony crime. And the phone call never came. And a few months later, I was like, all right, I'll buy another one. And then another one, and now here we are.
Yeah, so that's where you go back to Mark and thank him for being so pestering.
Oh, I have. He doesn't let me hear the end of it. No, he'll be the first one to tell you. No, if it wasn't for me, Mike never would have bought there. You're right, Mark. You're right. All credit to you.
and for those who don't know, right, and maybe those that are a bit more familiar with, investing remotely like that, a lot of what people tend to say, right, the most important thing you need when you invest remotely is the team, right? The people that you work with. It's your property manager, it's your lender, your insurance broker, your boots on the ground, whoever else you may need to run a successful real estate investing business. And in your case, did you have to build your own team out in Gary, Indiana, or were you able to kind of leverage some of Mark's network and people, I guess?
Yeah, so when I talk to people about who the most important person is in your out-of-state investing team, I always say the most important person is the other investors you're friends with. It's not your property manager. It's not his. You want other investors like I had Mark, because when you have a question about who to use, you don't have to go to Google and say, who's a good plumber? Or go to Google and say, who's a good property manager, and hope that the reviews are honest and then do trial by fire until you find the right people. You go to other investors, and I would prefer not just one people. I prefer you're chatting with and talking to multiple people. Who do you use as a property manager? You ask 5 people who they use or who they've heard is good, you'll start to hear the same names come up as good and the same names come up as bad. And that can be for property managers, agents, plumbers, whatever it might be. So the most important person in your out-of-state investing team is the other investors you're friends with who are not trying to sell you anything, pull one over on you, make any money off of you. They just want to see you succeed. After that, it's a property manager. And where did I find mine? A referral. That's where I try to find most people, referrals from other people I've done business with.
Yep, 100%. We did the exact same thing, essentially. We spent about 6 months, I think, building our teams well, we're not in Gary, close as we talked about, so in Indiana, but in St. Louis as well. And I think about 6 or 8 months of that was just talking to other investors, other successful, investors, and then from them getting referrals, talking to these referrals and whatnot. So awesome. In all of these things that you've done so far, Mike, what's your favorite success story that you like to share with folks?
Well, I think my favorite success story isn't about me. If we make it full circle, I think really what it comes down to is who you help. And, Mark gets probably an enormous amount of success knowing that he didn't just help me get started, but he's helped a couple of his kids' friends, some of his former friends that were in the police department with him. And he has this little merry band of investors. And collectively, we probably have about 100 plus properties in Gary alone. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Mark. My satisfaction comes from helping other people. I've helped a couple people from my job. I'm a police officer. A couple people in my department have bought a rental property out there. I've got a friend who watched my YouTube channel one day. He saw me make a comment on a Meet Kevin video, and then found my channel, watched it, figured out I lived in Seattle, sent me a message saying he lived close, asked if we could meet up. He was making $13 an hour working at Starbucks. I helped him quit that job and get hired as a security officer and making $26 an hour. So he doubled his paycheck, had unlimited overtime opportunities. He was able to save up, get 2 rentals with financing, and now, because he works so much overtime, he's actually going to pay cash for a 3rd rental in Gary. He'll have 3 rentals, 1 completely paid off. So what gives me the most happiness, what makes me feel the most fulfilled, what's my biggest success story, would be helping somebody else get what they want in life. And my buddy Darius, shout out to him. He has worked very hard, and he's a fantastic success story.
Shout out Darius then. Sounds awesome. Great story there. I like that definition of success there and what fulfills you. How has your definition of success changed over time? Or has it? From 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, to today, and maybe what you want to achieve in the future?
Yeah, see, that's a good question. I think, so I played soccer most of my life, which is a team sport. And then when you become a police officer, you do a lot of work by yourself, but you usually have a partner. But when I got on the SWAT team, it was another team sport. There's a certain brotherhood that's formed between you and your friends when we are all going to get shot at today, and it's happening right now, and we have a job to do, and we've got to protect each other. And that team mentality is what I would consider my overall definition of success, because I kind of look at life as I want to build the biggest team of people that I can. Every single person that I help, every single person that I can respond to when they send me a DM on Instagram, if I can just provide them with some value, they're now a part of my team. Because if I have a question for them and they're in the area, great, I can reach out to this person. We've exchanged value back and forth. I help them, they help me. It's just everything in life is about who you know, so you need to know as many people as you can. And if you can help people, even if it's a dumb question, I tell this story all the time about probably my best deal I've done, a Burr strategy deal that I found from a wholesaler. The quick numbers on it were purchase price $29,000, a $29,000 house. Can you believe it? $25,000 in remodeling costs. So I'm all in for $55,000. Had an after repair value of $134,000. Right, I more than doubled my money. Was able to pull out enough money to pay myself some profit, plus keep it cash flowing. Monthly payment $650, rents for $1,250. Very, very good burst strategy deal. Could be the poster child for the burst strategy. How did I find that deal? 6 months before I get this deal, a random Instagram follower with no profile picture, no posts on his account, just starts DMing me, asking me random questions about Gary. But I always make a point to respond to everybody. And I just chatted with this guy back and forth for like 4 or 5 months. And one day he sends me a screenshot of this deal. Says, hey, this is in some Facebook group I'm a part of. Have you seen it? And I was like, no, man. Do you want to buy it? He's like, oh, I don't have the money right now. Do you want it? I was like, yeah. So I get this deal that comes to me because some random dude I've been talking to whose real name I don't even know. His Instagram profile picture is like REI Learner, bro. Like, I don't even know what your real name is. But I get this slam dunk of a deal because you just talk to enough people, you build a big enough team, you put out what you want to get back, and eventually it comes back to you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You know, people make or break any endeavor in life, right? So grow that network, right? That's pretty awesome. If I flip it here and change direction a little bit, what about an incredibly difficult time in your life that you feel comfortable sharing with the audience? Kind of, you know, could you walk us through what that was and maybe what mindset you were in to kind of help yourself get out of it?
Sure. Yeah. You know, if I think about the 2 most difficult times in my life, one of them was probably when I was 17. I got kicked out of my house. I mentioned earlier my family life was not great. My mom had a terrible boyfriend who was a crazy, psycho, abusive dude, and came down to either he or I was going, and the decision was me. And I ended up moving out here from North Dakota to Washington, and that was tough. But I think when you're a kid, you're just filled with like optimism and whatever, and I just kind of worked my way through it. But I think a more relatable struggle that probably a lot of people have, and hopefully people that are watching this, I got divorced. I was married, I got divorced, and initially I didn't have full custody of my son. It's very hard as a man to get custody of your child. About 85% of the time it goes to the woman. And whatever your feelings are on that, sometimes the other person doesn't deserve to have the kids. And so there was a while where there was some struggle going on before I eventually got full custody of my son. And once full custody of my son was given to me, I have not heard from the other person for years. So I won't go into specific details, but it was very tough to go through a divorce. It's demoralizing. You oftentimes get zeroed out as a man. You lose everything, all your money, you're just gone. Retirement gets cut in half or just taken. You pay a ton of money in child support, and you feel like, how do I recover from this financially? How in the world, like, I spent all these years working to where I was, and now I just am back to zero again, and I don't get to even see my own kid anymore, And in my case, luckily, I will say luckily, because again, the odds that you get custody of a child as a man, your viewers can do the mental math in their head as to what must have happened for that to happen, because that does not happen. But being a single dad now with full custody of my son, like, it was very hard. How do you get childcare? How do you pay for child? It's ridiculously expensive to pay for daycare. It's so pricey. And then now, okay, great. I would have worked more overtime, but now I have my son. I got to pay for childcare, and then I got to get home. I can't work the overtime I need to work. Putting in all the systems and processes in place to take care of. He came to me when he was 2. A 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. It's not like he's 10 and he's a little self-sufficient. He's still only 6. Yeah. And he's my kid, so he's got a deficiency there. He's a weirdo, So,
full of energy. Full of energy.
Full of energy. But I think there's probably a lot of folks who have some of the same situations that I've gone through, which is you live in a very high cost of living area. It's hard to make sense of investing in your own backyard. Everything's expensive. The local laws are not in favor of a landlord. We got eviction moratoriums that have gone on for 1.5 to 2 years. You're a single parent. You don't have a lot of disposable income. You definitely don't have a lot of disposable time. You're trying to be a good parent. You're trying to take care of your kids. Maybe there's a deadbeat as the other parent, and that goes both ways. Women have a lot of deadbeat dads. Men can have a deadbeat wife, a little less common, but it happens. And you just feel down. What do you do next? How do you get through it? And my buddy Dion, who has a YouTube channel, Dion Talk, he loves to say, you're going to be alive in 5 years, start investing like it. And I can promise you, no matter how bad it is, barring some crazy, freak accident, you're going to fight your way through it. You're going to figure your way out through it in 5 years. So plan on it. Invest for it. Don't Don't make the critical error of saying, you know what, I'm just going to try later. I'll figure it out in another. I'll start investing. I'll start saving in another few months, not this month. No matter how small it is, even if it's literally just $1, put something away, because I know that's not very much money, but it's the discipline that you're developing to take action to put that money away. $10, $20, just put it away into something. Go to the real estate meetup. Even if you are broke with no money, go to your local real estate meetup, watch the podcasts, talk to people. There's a lot of ways to buy real estate with next to nothing, like almost $0. You might have to pay some closing costs, but you need to know the right people. And that goes back to what I said earlier. Everything in life's about who you know, so know as many people as you can. If you're broke, if you're down on your luck, if you're a single parent, if you don't have a lot of time, but you can make it to your real estate meetup, guess what? The people there have hearts. They like to talk to new people. You'll probably make friends with someone who could very well change your life.
Yeah, 100%. And never giving up, building those habits, like you said, they make it change everything, right? It's just, the consistency in the daily, work and daily habit is what ultimately helps you get to wherever it is you want to go. Mike, so you were saying earlier, you're obviously a giver, right? Between your YouTube channel, your Instagram, you're a regular on Zuber's show with Dion Talk, Financial Freedom that we just mentioned, and the Lumberjack Landlord, as well. What is your secret sauce, or what is the thing that you tell people when you encounter them? These people are stuck and just tell you they weren't dealt the right hand of cards and they can't do it because of whatever situation. Obviously, you shared with us your whole, story here, so you have a lot that you could potentially relate to. But what do you tell them? What's your secret sauce?
I think probably one of the most undesirable and unattractive qualities or traits in a human being is being ungrateful. I think the worst one is laziness, because laziness, you have all this opportunity, all this potential, and if you're too lazy to do anything, it's truly it's almost disgusting. But ungratefulness is probably number two. Here in America, we're very spoiled. We're very lucky. We are so lucky. If you're broke in America, it's your fault. Maybe you're 18, sure, it's not. But by the time you're 25, if you're broke, it's your fault. You are making poor choices. There's no reason why anyone should be broke. God forbid you have some crazy critical health condition. That's another exception, maybe. But what I tell people is, look, man, you got to put things into perspective. Okay, because no matter how bad first of all, I'll go toe to toe with anybody on the poverty Olympics in our country, but I can't hold a candle to somebody who has really struggled. My first sergeant when I came out commissioned as a police officer, my first sergeant, his name's, I won't give his full name because he might not want me to, Sergeant Yim. Sergeant Yim moved here from Korea as a little boy, from South Korea. He grew up living in a dirt hut where they had dirt floors, so poor after the Korean War, a generation after the Korean War, and he was able to move here. And he tells a story about how when his rich uncle would come visit from America, and he would bring Hershey's Kisses over for the kids. And to this day, he always on his desk keeps a bottle of Hershey's Kisses because it's just a symbol of wealth for this man. And being at a place where you're so poor and so destitute and struggle so much that just the opportunity to try a piece of chocolate one time a year was like Christmas. Everything is about perspective. No matter how bad you have it, no matter how hard it is, someone else had it worse, dug themselves out of it, and then made it work and is at the place you want to be. So you can choose to pick yourself up and work hard, or you can choose to just complain about it. And it's very, very tempting. This is more of a cultural analysis. We have a society where we don't hold ourselves accountable. Everybody tries as hard as they can to blame anyone but them. Because who wants to take responsibility? It doesn't feel good to go sit and look in the mirror and say the reason for all of my problems is me. It's much easier to say it's the government, it's capitalism, it's, I was born at the wrong time, Well, shoot, I would have been a rich millionaire in real estate if I'd been investing in 2008. But silly me, I was in the 11th grade and unable to buy real estate. I get it. There's a lot of excuses. It would be great if I could have bought cheap houses in the 90s, but I was 3, so I couldn't, But that doesn't mean you can't do it now. That's just you have to do it differently, more creatively. You might have to work harder. It was easier to just get a pension 30, 40 years ago. That doesn't exist anymore. What are you going to do? Just complain about it forever? Or are you going to change? So the advice I give people is, yeah, man, there's nothing wrong with complaining a little bit. It feels good. It's venting. But you can't let that become your whole personality. If the complaint doesn't end with some sort of resolution, with a solution for your problem, then that's your fault. You need to stop being a negative person and shift towards positivity. And if you can't do that for yourself, get around some people or someone who can help you find the positive solutions, or you're just going to end up in a rut forever.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's always easier to point the finger and blame everything and everyone else. But I agree. It's good to vent every now and again, but then take action, move on, and change the situation, right? Awesome, Mike. I want to make sure we're mindful of your time here and start getting you out of here. The last couple of questions I have for you, Mike, before I let you go, what book recommendation would you have for the audience here? Obviously, for those who are watching this on YouTube, one of my favorite books is in the picture here and in the frame, but what other books do you have, Mike, what book, I guess, even if it's that one, would you have to recommend for the audience?
You know, if you've talked a lot about Mike's book, I'll skip it. No offense, Mike. I love you, buddy. But why don't we talk about The Millionaire Next Door? This is a great book right here. If you've never read this book, you should. It was a study conducted by a couple of different scientists of several hundred millionaires, and they wanted to see what characters and qualities and traits are exhibited or common between people who were millionaires. And this book was, I think, initially done in the 90s, back when being a millionaire actually meant something. Nowadays, you pretty much have to be like a 5 millionaire plus for it to be the equivalent. But really, I think the key takeaway that I got from it is not only are there secret millionaires, hidden millionaires, a lot of people's money's wrapped up in their house and stuff like that. Nothing wrong with that. But it talks about how to raise kids to not become dependent on their parents' money. And that's like the largest problem that you find with people who are well off. The majority of people who are first-generation millionaires, believe it or not, according to the book, are first-generation immigrants to our country who start their own business and become a millionaire. And then what happens is they put their kids through the life they always wanted. They put their kids through college, they pay for their lifestyles, but these kids become handicapped because they don't know how to ever earn something for themselves. They get accustomed to mom and dad's rich lifestyle, but they never get the job that can pay for it. So mom and dad supplement their income. This handicaps their ability to grow on their own. And then by the third generation, all of the wealth is completely gone. And that, it's just the old adage of hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And it's literally that cycle through the generation of, if you want to help your children, don't pay for their stuff. Don't let them starve to death, child abuse or anything. But like, you don't pay for their $60,000 a year state university education. Make them pay to go to community college. Make them go out and mow the lawn. Don't give them money. Make them work. And if you don't do that, you're really doing them a disservice. It's tough love. Make them earn it. So it's a great takeaway from the book. It's a great book.
Yeah, it is a fantastic book, and couldn't agree more in getting your kids to do some hard work a bit, to, just learn and appreciate the value of, hard work and what it brings you in life. How about an app, a tool, a piece of software, something that you use on a regular basis that helps you?
If I was going to promote one thing, it's that we talked earlier about the power of networking. I like to talk about the power of virtual networking. I got made fun of as a kid when I would go home from school and hop online to play World of Warcraft with my online friends that I've never really met. I have, at this point in my phone, this is not meant to just be a humble brag, I can text right now any number of people worth $50 million, probably like 5 to 10 different 50 million net worth real estate investors. Why? Because I started watching their YouTube channel, and I left comments, and I DM'd them on Instagram, and I talked to these people. And what they would charge someone in terms of a consultation fee to the tune of $800 an hour, you can get for free if you watch their live stream and put $2 into a super chat. You can get a 10-minute answer from them, because there's a lot of people who are very successful at investing in real estate or building a business or whatever you want, who are trying to break out into social media. And it's super, super hard to break out into social media. And so these people have 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 subscribers. Guess what? They have time to answer the comments, to respond to your messages. You try to message Brandon Turner or David Green, dude, they get 10 million messages a day. You'll never hear from these people. But Michael Zuber, the Lumberjack, Nathan, me, small-time YouTubers who are investing in your local market, you can have a full-blown conversation with me and get great advice on real estate for free. So if I was going to promote apps that are going to help you in your investing journey, it's not some calendar app that's the secret sauce to make you produce better. It's not some special calculator app that's going to show you how to like analyze deals better. everything in life is about who you know. So you need to know as many people as you can. Well, there's this beautiful new tool that will let you get introduced to people with $50 million net worths and 200 rentals and 20 years worth of experience. And if you just watch their YouTube channel and leave a comment, they'll talk to you. That's what you need to do, because you need to meet the right people.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well said. Well, awesome. With that, last question for you, Millennial Mike, before I let you go here. Amazing conversation, of course, but how can our audience help you, and how can they reach out with you if you so choose? You're a regular on Zuber's channel. You talk with Dion, the Lumberjack, a whole bunch. You have your own YouTube and Instagram. How can they get in touch?
Yeah, if people want to learn more about out-of-state investing or long-distance investing, just follow me on YouTube. It's Millennial Mike, or Instagram, Millennial Mike, or TikTok, Millennial Mike. Whatever your choice of social media is, you can chat with me, talk with me, watch my content. I do breakdowns on my channel with all of the numbers, the exact numbers for rehab costs and everything, man. I try to be as honest and transparent as possible. If you want to watch that, just follow me on one of the social media platforms.
Awesome. Well, with that, Mike, we'll put all of this in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing everything you shared with us today. Fantastic conversation, and hopefully we'll have you back on very soon. Mike, thanks so much. You take care.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.